of the topics, so it will be, some of them will be a revision and some of them will be a new topic. So we'll start off with the Indian Parliament, the structure, functions and procedure. Now if you look at the structure and core functions, I will skip those that I've explained in detail, but just for your revision, the composition of the Indian Parliament, which includes the President, the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, as mentioned in Article 79, we have discussed it. Lok Sabha means House of the People. Why is it called House of the People? Because it is directly elected by the people. Subhamran was elected directly by the people. And Rajya Sabha, Council of States, right? It is chosen by the members of Legislative Assembly of the states. So Pangnon was chosen by the MLAs of our state. And then these three broad functions are handled by the Parliament. You look at legislation, you look at financial control, you look at control and accountability of the executive. Okay, the executive will have executive functions, but when it comes to the Indian Parliament as a whole, it doesn't have the kind of executive functions that the Executive Council, which means Modi and his Council of Ministers, have, right? They have the power to legislate, they have the power to make laws, they have the power to vote. If a bill is introduced in a parliament, some of the bill requires a majority, simple majority, a special majority plus state ratification and so forth. We studied about that. So all these are voted upon by members of the parliament. And the same is the case for the states, okay? So legislative power, and they also have financial control, right? On certain, not money bill, okay? Financial bill. They have control over financial bills, and then they have control and accountability of the executive, which means the executive, the Council of Ministers, is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. They must answer to the Lok Sabha, the Council of Ministers. Okay, whatever they do, they must give reasons, and they can be questioned upon. The executive, which means the Council of Ministers, can be questioned upon, can be inquired upon by the members of the Parliament, or in that case, the members of Lok Sabha. And even in Rajya Sabha, the members of the Rajya Sabha can raise questions, can vote upon any kind of laws passed in the Indian Parliament, except for money bill. It can vote on financial bill, it can vote on ordinary bill, and so forth. So overall, we can see that this Indian Parliament, that consists of the Rajya Sabha, the Lok Sabha and the President, they have three broad functions: the legislative powers, the financial powers, the control and accountability of the executive, which is exclusive to Lok Sabha. Okay, the first two common, the last one exclusive to Lok Sabha. And very important point, you might be asked this question in the preliminary examination. The Council of Ministers is not responsible to, let's say, the Prime Minister. It is responsible to the Lok Sabha. Okay, the Lok Sabha can pass a motion of no confidence, in which if all of them vote upon it and there is a majority decision that these Council of Ministers must step down from their powers, the Council of Ministers will have to do so, right? So it is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha, okay? Now, this is the parliamentary sessions and procedures that we have already discussed about. It is summoned by the President. Every session is summoned by the President, right? We discussed about that. Parliamentary meeting iktase, always summoned by the President, presided by the Speaker of Lok Sabha, or in the case of Rajya Sabha, presided by the Chairman, or in our Nagaland Legislative Assembly, presided by the Speaker, who at the moment is Sharingan Longomar. Okay, so but it is summoned by the President, which is mentioned in Article 55. The maximum gap between two sessions, budget session, let's say it's in the month of January. After January, it shouldn't go beyond 6 months until the next session, which means Feb, March, April, May, June, July. Okay. If the session was on January 18, it shouldn't cross July 18. Before July 18, another session must be held. So there should not be a gap of more than 6 months between any session. And the key procedures, we also studied about the key procedures. Adjournment means it suspends the sitting temporarily, the sitting of the Parliament. Okay, let's say there's the Lok Sabha has a sitting and it is discussing on a very important issue about, let's say, citizenship. Okay, they discuss about the proposal of dual citizenship, and some people are agreeing, some people are not agreeing. And if there's a deadlock, maybe the time it goes beyond 6 p.m. and everyone is tired and they wish to go back home, the Speaker will use this adjournment to suspend the sitting temporarily. Okay, and when adjournment is done, it will give a date on which the next sitting will continue. But in adjournment sine die, it ends a sitting for an indefinite period, which means the speaker isn't obligated to tell the members of the parliament exactly when the next sitting is going to be. Indefinite period. So technically, if we look at it, it's almost like prorogation. Prorogation means it ends a session. Let's say the budget session, right? The budget session doesn't just happen in a day, okay? It goes on for days and days. It goes on for days and days. If you look at the budget session, you will realize that it goes on for days and days. They have a lot of discussions on this, that, demand for grants. Minister keman, udun ministry keman diwo, kili man diwo. Mohan bi lagi say there are flood victims here. There are people who are struggling here. We need more grants and this and that. They have a lot of discussions on the budget. So this is budget session. So there's a lot of adjournments, okay? The speaker will say that the house has been adjourned and we will have the next meeting on this and this, that. And then they will convene again, have another session, and if again they cannot come to a definitive conclusion, then they'll again adjourn the sitting, and then the next sitting will be declared by the speaker. But in some cases, more usually in monsoon and winter session, if they discuss on a topic, they will suspend it without giving a specific date. And sometimes they never come back to discuss on that same topic. Okay, so but when they don't come back to discuss on the same topic and it goes on for, let's say, more than 5-6 months, and then the next session comes, monsoon session next year, winter session comes, then automatically monsoon session has been terminated or has ended, right? Not because the president who can prorogue officially ends a sitting, but because time inika jai jise. That's adjournment sine die, okay? It ends a session, and it ends a sitting to a indefinite period. Time ekta nade, when the next meeting is going to be. So technically, if you look at it, adjournment sine die eventually turns into prorogation. It makes sense now? It makes sense? Now dissolution, it ends Lok Sabha. After 5 years, usually, after 5 years, the president dissolves the Lok Sabha and new elections are held. But dissolution cannot be applied in Rajya Sabha because, as I explained, Rajya Sabha, 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years. 1/3 of its members. So the rest of the members continue to be in office. And it keeps on changing. It's a continuous cycle. Every 2 years, kunba kan ulai jawa, kunba replace jawa. After 2 years, aro last time najakan jawa. After 2 years, first 2 years it najakan do jawa. It keeps on changing, but the rest of the members continue to be in office, which is why the Rajya Sabha is permanent, so it can never, ever be dissolved. Okay, it's only for the Lok Sabha and quorum. For any discussions to be held, we need a quorum. Okay, for any meeting to be held, if the quorum, the criteria for the quorum is not met, they cannot have a parliamentary session. Let's say right now it's 545. Okay, just for the sake of the argument, just for the sake of the discussion, let's say Lok Sabha there 100 members of parliament are say down the total strength. The 1/10 of the total membership would be 10 members. So 10 members na they cannot have a meeting. So quorum is a minimum number of members of parliament that you need in order to have a meeting, in order to have a session, in order to have a sitting. Okay, any kind of parliamentary session will require a quorum, a minimum of 1/10 of of the total membership. That's what the quorum is all about. Okay. Now next we move on to question R and 0R. The first was question R. A lot of people get confused in the examination. We were asked these questions, I think, twice or thrice. Okay. 0R means zero. So people naturally think it comes first. No, it doesn't come first. And 0 is not mentioned in the Indian Constitution as well. Just by parliamentary standard, procedure, it continued to be adopted by the Indian Parliament every year. But it's not explicitly mentioned in the Indian Constitution. What's mentioned is the question R. Okay? So we talked about question R, the start question, unstart question, and then the short notice. The start question means it will require oral answer from the ministry concerned. For example, if you write and submit to the speaker a question, the speaker may decide whether it's start or whether it's not start. If it's start, then that question will be submitted to whichever ministry you wish to question, and the minister of that ministry will have to answer. Okay? So, unstart means written answer, no supplementaries, the minister concerned will have to give you a reply, but in written form. Okay, and there will be no further question asked by you. And short notice means very urgent sometimes. Very urgent, I say the speaker may or may not accept. Okay, 0 hour, it immediately follows after question hour, right? Question hour bichire MPs they raise matters of any sub chamlala period as a 0 hour. They discuss on matters of public importance. It is not mentioned in the constitution or rules, but it evolved by parliamentary practice. Always remember that, okay? 0 hour. Who knows? They might ask you the question. Now, motions and resolutions. We talked about adjournment motion. We talked about no confidence motion, censure motion, and privilege motion. These are the motions, again, that any member in the parliament can introduce. Okay. Now, when we talk about adjournment motion, for example, if you're a member of parliament inside a parliamentary session, you will raise an adjournment motion. And if you raise an adjournment motion, you raise your hand, and then, if you have a matter of public importance, something very emergency, you can raise your hand and you can move this adjournment motion, and if the speaker accepts it, he will grant you the stage to speak. Okay, so that's adjournment motion. Only for public importance you can raise your hand for adjournment motion. That's adjournment motion. And no confidence motion. No confidence motion, to it tests the confidence of the ministry. In case of no confidence motion, let's say majority of the members of the Lok Sabha, they vote on it, and then majority of them say yes, the Council of Ministers need to step down from their posts. Okay, and new Council of Ministers will be chosen, obviously, but all these Council of Ministers, that's called collective responsibility. We rise and fall together. All the Council of Ministers, they always support each other at every turn, because the moment they show their weaknesses, the MP, the members of parliament will find that weakness and will use this as a tool against them to raise the no confidence motion. And once it's raised, I raise a no confidence motion. If someone says that, let's vote on it. And if everybody votes on it, and majority of the people say vote on no confidence motion, then the Council of Ministers will have to step down. Okay, that's what no confidence motion is. There are some requirements and prerequisites which I've explained in my previous class. You can check it, you can take a look at the lecture. And then the censure motion, again, for criticizing specific policy or action. Okay, that motion is raised in the parliament for criticizing specific policy or action. It could be against a scheme, MG Energy scheme maybe, right? One member of parliament can raise a motion, can stand up, and then can complain on a specific policy or action. And usually, people who are in support of it, people who are not in support of it, and all that. It's very messy, okay, in a parliamentary session. But all you need to know is that censure motion is raised by any member of the parliament to criticize a specific policy or action. Okay, so if somebody rises up and if somebody criticizes a policy or an action, that's censure motion. Very simple. The terms are a little technical, but you can understand the difference, right? When a member criticizes a public policy, it means censure motion. And when a member raises up to present an issue of public importance, urgent matter, it's called adjournment motion. And last is privilege motion. Alleges breach of privilege. For example, let's say you are a member of INC, Indian National Congress, and you are a member of the Indian Parliament, and Dharmendra Pradhan, who stepped down as the Minister of Education, let's say he was the Minister of Education, and then the NEET papers leaked. Right? The NEET papers leaked, and then Dharmendra Pradhan rises up and says that, if he says that the NEET examination and so forth, there was no paper leak, it was misinformation. There actually was paper leak, right? But he's lying. He's giving you guys misinformation. So you can raise a privilege motion. You can stand up and say, Dharmendra Pradhan has committed a breach of privilege. His privilege. What is his privilege? His privilege is to speak in the parliament, the freedom to speak in the parliament, but he's breaching his rights, his privileges. That's what privilege motion is all about. Okay? You complaining to the speaker that Dharmendra Pradhan has breached his privilege. That's your allegation. And which means you are raising a privilege motion. So it's very simple, right? So you can research on that. And resolutions, formal expressions of House opinions or decision. Private members' resolution, government's resolution, statutory resolution. So I think I don't need to explain that in too much detail. We already covered that in our previous classes. The formal expression of the House's opinions. If the private member, right, supports a certain bill, it means that's his private member's resolution. It's just decision, okay? It's just decision of the private member, the decision of the government resolution, the statutory resolution, and so forth. Now we look at parliamentary privileges. I will go very fast. The meaning and key privileges in the parliament. So every member of the parliament is given these freedoms, these privileges, special rights and immunities. The freedom of speech in parliament. They can speak whatever they wish to speak in the Indian parliament, and they are immune from courts for the speech or vote in sight. If they vote, even let's say there is a very grievous, there's a very dark bill passed by the Indian parliament which says that Christians will be chased away from India. Okay, and if majority, even if some of the members of parliament vote in favor of it, supporting that bill, they will not be punished in the court, even though later on the court declares that that was that bill was inhuman, that bill was against the principles of the democracy. Even if that were to be the case, even if the Supreme Court declares it to be as such, no members of the parliament will be punished for voting or for speaking out in the parliament. Okay, so right to regulate internal proceedings, and they have their own freedom to regulate the internal proceedings. For example, they introduce this, they continue to use the 0R, right? So that's an internal proceeding. And there are certain punishments that they give out to people, and there are some methods that they use in their internal proceedings, like the leader of the opposition, the leader of the ruling party, they'll select their own leaders, and then these leaders will be given the opportunity to stand up for their own party and so forth. Okay, it's not nowhere mentioned in the Indian Constitution, but for internal proceedings, they regulate it. Tan nijo rules banai. One ina tagode, ina grude na. And last is right to protect the proceedings from interference. Again, the court has no say, or no one can go against whatever they've decided. There's protection, okay, from interference by the courts, interference by the media, or whatever it may be. Whatever internal proceedings they wish to conduct, they can conduct it. They have the freedom to decide how parliamentary sessions are going to be conducted. They have the freedom to decide, like, who does this and who does what. Okay. Now we have the parliamentary committees. I mentioned about Public Accounts Committee. On the right, you can see Estimates Committee, Committee on Public Undertakings. What did I say about Public Accounts Committee? It examines the reports of the Comptroller and Auditor General. So the differences between these three is that estimate, which means estimate or calculate kuredo. Ekta estimate future de kiman puisa jabo. Government ba kini ko utu puisa chulabo. Estimate committee, it handles that. Okay. Public Accounts Committee to public la puisa kina chulai ase. Public la puisa kina handle kore ase. Koi Comptroller and Auditor General report divido every department puisa kiman phelaise. Question grow. Apni la fund de iman jaise. Holibi iman 60,000 crore padaise, but where is the remaining 30,000 crore? Because the project that you did is only worth 30,000 crore. Where is the rest of the 30,000 crore? Public Accounts Committee, the question grow. And then lastly, Committee on Public Undertakings. So any company owned by the Indian government in part or whole is called public sector undertakings. What is the that's called PSU, right? Name one PSU in Nagaland that we have here in Nagaland. Can you guys think of any PSU? A very good example that you can use in your exam is NST, okay, Nagaland State Transport. It is a public sector undertaking, which means it is owned by the government but used for commercial purposes, right? It's kind of like a private company owned by the state government. So it's the PSU of Nagaland State Government, okay? So the Committee on Public Undertakings will only handle companies that are owned by the Indian government, by the state government, and for the central government, right? So these are the three differences of the financial committees. And others, we have department-related standing committees, committees on privileges and assurances, business advisory committee, and so forth. Okay. Now, budgetary control and control over executive. So this, we look at control over public finance. So it talks about how the Indian Parliament has control over the budget and has control over the executive. How does the Parliament has control over public finances? Article 265, no tax shall be levied without law. Right? There should be proper law that authorizes the government, that authorizes the executive to collect taxes. Okay, that's first. And who creates the law? The Parliament, right? Now, expenditure requires parliamentary authorization. Now, expenditure for, let's say, there's financial bill and this and that, so it requires parliamentary authorization, right? And even for money bill, it is introduced in the Lok Sabha, so it needs authorization from the members of Lok Sabha, who are members of the Indian Parliament. For financial bill, it requires authorization of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So in every angle, it requires parliamentary authorization. Okay. Annual financial statement, Article 112, right? It talks about whatever it once it's laid before the Parliament votes on it, right? Votes on the annual financial statement. The demand for grants voted by Lok Sabha, again in Lok Sabha, which is the Indian Parliament, part of the Indian Parliament, was for demand for grants made out by different ministries. And we also have the appropriation bill, which is a bill that authorizes the executive to withdraw funds from the consolidated fund of India. And then the finance bill, which is only for taxation. Okay, the power to levy tax is finance bill. Okay. Now, role of the speaker, or control over the executive, question and discussion, motions in no confidence motion, parliamentary committees, budgetary scrutiny, debates on government policies, which I will skip. And then the role of the speaker in any defection law. This is very important because I did not explain this to you guys in detail before. So who is the Speaker of the Lok Sabha? Article 39 elects the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He presides over House, maintains the members of the Lok Sabha will choose the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. They vote on it. Okay. So imagine that the Speaker of Lok Sabha, let's say, imagine that, BJP is a ruling party, which it actually is right now. So majority of the members of BJP are allies of BJP. So majority of the vote will be given to a speaker chosen by the BJP, right? So usually it's the ruling party who chooses a speaker. Let's put it this way, okay? They vote on it and then they choose a speaker and deputy speaker, okay? So they preside over House, they maintain order, right? The speaker is the one who maintains his discipline, just in the same way that they are CR inside the class representative. CR ki as a speaker udo asde. And one special power is the speaker decides whether it is a money bill, whether a bill is a money bill. I've explained about that, right? And we will also learn about Kito Holon and Zechulu, Kito Holon and Zechulu case, which happened way back in 1992. So funny. It's something that happened in Nagaland, but it was a landmark judgment in the Supreme Court, okay, that the entirety of India uses to this day. Like lawyers refer to this case very often when it comes to defection, cases related to defection. So this is a very important case that might be asked in the preliminary examination. So another power of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha is in case the Speaker of the Lok Sabha does not vote, okay, on any bill, but only if there is a tie, which means 50% says no, 50% says yes, then the Speaker will vote, only in case of a tie. And then he also decides procedural questions. Whatever question, start, unstart question, he is the one who decides whether a question is start, unstart, or whether he should accept questions of short notice, so forth. And he also chairs key committees, and whatever committees are in there. We talked about the Public Accounts Committee, SMS Committee, department-related standing committees, and so forth. So he also chairs certain committees, okay, as the Speaker of Lok Sabha. And 10th, you look at 10th schedule, the Speaker decides the defection qualifications, which means it is the Speaker who decides, right, whether the punishment should be given to someone, a politician, a member of Indian Parliament who has defected to another party. Okay, let's say right now, can you guys give me any Okay, now we have an opposition-less government, but back then, Azo Nino was the leader of the NBF party in the previous election, right? And then we had the NDPP led by Nifurio. So Azo, after winning the election, did he defect? Did he go to NDPP? He did not go, right? He stayed in NBF. But if he had gone to NDPP all by himself, the defection rule would apply. He would be disqualified as the member of Legislative Assembly. Ini Azo, you cannot defect to other parties, okay, after winning the election. Whatever party you won the election as, you have to represent that party till the end of your term. But there's a small condition, which we will see in the anti-defection law. Okay, under what terms and conditions will you be punished under anti-defection law? So it is mentioned in then schedule. 52nd Amendment 1985 was the amendment that added the 10th schedule. I explained that as well. What are the disqualification criteria? Voluntarily giving up party membership. Na PGB charigana Congress Chinguraze. Defection law will apply to you. You will be disqualified. Voting or abstaining against party without permission. Now PGB hulibi Congress hulibi they vote kan to sub egi de. Without permission, voting or abstaining against party without permission gusugle defect korala ekta, they are going against, right? So again, kind of like collective responsibility. If you are a member of a party, you have to follow their lead, you have to listen to them and so forth. It is to protect party interests, okay? And independents disqualified if they join a party after election. Let's say I contested an election and then I did not join any party. I contested the election as an independent candidate. And after I win the election, I wish to be in good terms with Nifurio, and so I go to him and I join him. I will be disqualified. Okay? You cannot do that as well. Now the only exception is if there's a merger of 2/3 of legislature party. Merger of 2/3 of legislature party. There will be no disqualification, which means 2/3 majority 100 China merger gushe after legislature. 2/3 100 as a 2/3 would be 66. Na? So 66 manu ekta party to join gushe ki koribo na? Manu man bishi ase. And in that case, disqualification no hobo. Okay? Utu ikla ase. Because that has become common consensus, right? Not individual desire. Okay? So in the Kito Holon versus Zachilu, Zachilu was like the speaker, and then Holon was the member of Legislative Assembly of Nagaland. Okay, so they discussed in the Utu time dido. Surprisingly, they used to discuss a lot about what the law means, what this means, what that means. Actually, in fact, puilala mala politicians they were much more well polished, okay, much more educated. But it has become a practice that, you know, it is true money that we win elections, and now we have a lot of illiterate MLAs. Back then, balbal kandagisha. Now, even in that Holon versus Zachilu, it wasn't a case submitted by Holon to the Supreme Court. Okay, it was actually the Nagaland state government who did that, because in the Legislative Assembly they had a discussion on anti-defection laws. There were a lot of confusion in Nagaland. Even the speaker, right, was confused how they applied the anti-defection laws. Zachilu was the speaker, and so even he had points of confusion, and some of the members, even Zachilu had his opinion, but when he gave his opinion, some of the members, they rose against it, saying it's not true, this and that, and so forth. So there were mainly two questions raised. What are the defection laws? How to explain grow, and then secondly, whether the speaker's decision is final. Right, the law states that the speaker's decision will be final, whether that person should be disqualified or not disqualified. So they gave it to the court, and then the court clarified that the speaker's decision is final, but the Supreme Court introduced one very important caveat, which is it is subject to judicial review. So the speaker's decision is final, but don't think that you can escape the court. The court will review the validity of your decision. Now, it is important, which means the speaker no longer can misuse his power to disqualify a member from the Lok Sabha, disqualify a member from the Nagaland Legislative Assembly. It is subject to judicial review. Okay, don't forget this point. That's it. Now we go to state legislature. We'll move very fast for state legislature. The composition and role of state legislature. We talked about the legislature, is equal to governor plus legislative assembly. That's the legislature. Just in the same way, the president plus the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha together forms the legislature of the center and legislature of the state, governor plus legislative assembly. Some states additionally have legislative council, which I mentioned that as well, which we call bicameral legislature. We have the Vidhan Sabha, known as legislative assembly. It's just a Hindi name, okay, for legislative assembly. We have the Vidhan Parishad, which is a legislative council, the upper house in bicameral states, a permanent body. And three main functions of the state legislature: lawmaking, financial control, accountability. I don't think I need to explain it since it's same with the center, right? The legislature, the state legislature also make laws. It also has financial control, right? It votes on demand for grants, it votes on the annual financial statement and so forth. And accountability of the state executive. Rio and his council of ministers are the state executive, and these people are responsible to, accountable to state legislature. Okay? Now, how a bill becomes a law. How a bill becomes a law. Introduction: the bill may be introduced in either house in bicameral legislature. We have the Lok Sabha, we have the legislative assembly as well as the legislative council, right? So in our case, we only have the legislative assembly, and money bills can only be introduced in legislative assembly, but any other bill can be introduced in either of the house. Now let's take the case of Nagaland. We only have a legislative assembly. So let's say the bill is introduced in the legislative assembly. There will be the first reading, the second reading, detailed clause by clause consideration, and then the third reading. I talked about all the three readings, right? I explained to you guys. And only then it will pass through both the houses, but in our case, just the legislative assembly, since we don't have a legislative council. And once it's passed in the house, it will be sent to the governor, and the governor can either accept, send it back for reconsideration, or withhold his assent. Except for money bill. For money bill, he cannot send back. Okay, he is obligated to give his assent, but he can reserve even money bill for the president. It does. So the governor's assent. That's how the bill becomes law. And I've already explained that, so I will skip that. I'll skip the detailed explanation. The speaker and chairman. Again, the speaker in German. Chairman will be legislative council. Speaker will be legislative assembly. So they have similar powers and functions. Okay. Decides the money bill, whether money bill is a money bill, the speaker, and casting vote in case of a tie, same vote tagile, he votes, and he also decides disqualification, then schedule subject to judicial review, right? It's the same. Whereas for the chairman, it's similar to Rajya Sabha chairman, elected by the council, presides over the council proceedings. He is the one, the CR of the class, and then he maintains the order, right? He enforces procedural rules of the house. Okay. Very similar to the speaker, except that he doesn't have power with regards to money bill and so forth. But he can also cast a vote in case of a tie. The state legislative committees. Again, the financial committee, we have the public accounts committee, estimates committee, committee on public undertakings. I've already explained that. The same is the case in the state as it was in the center. The committee on public undertakings would be a committee that handles companies such as NST. I mentioned about that, right? Nagaland State Transport is a PSU here in the state. So, and then the estimates committee will provide an estimation of kiman jawale se Nagaland de puisa salary de kiman puisa jawale se overall entire la estimation la tan suggest kurubo dan advice kurubo reduce kan grow gule kuro increase grow gule kuro na. And then we have the public accounts committee. Pura public account puisa kina jaise kina na jai tan question kurubo. And other committees. There are many committees, okay? And legislative privileges. These are some of the legislative privileges. It's the same with the center as well. They have the freedom to speak. They are immune from court proceedings for speeches in the house. They have the right to regulate internal proceedings of the house. They have the right to protect the dignity and authority of the house. They have the power to deal with certain breaches of privilege. Okay? State budget and control over executive. State budget. The governor lays the annual financial statement. State budget. Okay. Estimated receipt and expenditure. What is receipt? The money that they receive. What is expenditure? The money that they've spent on. That's called receipt and expenditure. Okay. So the annual financial statement will show the estimated receipt and expenditure, how much money they'll be getting, how much money they'll be spending. With the budget, I talked about the state budget as well as the central budget. It will contain a list of a book that will contain the receipt and expenditure, how much money they are going to spend on every department, and how much revenue they are going to receive. One of the only revenue generating department in Nagaland is the electrical department. Rest, most of them are expenditure based departments. Okay, R&B, road and bridges, panole, puisa chai thage, puisa to nahe. We don't even have the state la road can will be. It's not revenue generating because we don't levy poll tax, right? Road tax or this and that. So it will be a so for whatever revenue they're going to receive and whatever money they're going to spend on each department, this is called annual financial statement. I told you that the official name of the budget is AFI, annual financial statement. Please do not forget it, okay? So this is the process, the presentation of the budget, and then the general discussion, the scrutiny and voting on demand for grants, like I said, the legislature, demand for grants, appropriation bill, authorization for withdrawal from the CFI, and then the finance bill, which is related to tax. Okay, tax grow garni do finance bill pass grow lage. So these are the elements under the budgetary, the state budget, and also control over the executive, the legislative assembly, MLAs, Nagaland MLAs. They can question, right? They can raise motions, adjournment, no confidence, censure motion, and others. I talked about that. Financial control via demand for grants and expenditures, expenditure review, and then the committee reports and calling attention notices. Now let's talk about elections and electoral system. Okay, this is the third chapter. Let's talk about elections and electoral system. Now you look at Election Commission of India, the central constitutional authority ensuring free and fair election. Okay, so if you look at Election Commission of India and you look at Article 324, it will talk about the supervision of the Election Commission of India on elections in India. What are the elections that they conduct? Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the offices of the president and vice president, right? They don't conduct elections for municipal council, municipal town. Who conducts it? The State Election Commission. Okay, State Election Commission conducts elections for municipal council here in Nagaland, for town council, okay, whereas for the MLAs, more like MLA Khan, and then center Khan like MLA Khan, pure center Khan like MP Khan, everything Election Commission of India will conduct. That's one key difference. And office of the president and vice president, pura procedure, supervision, direction, control, everything is done by the Election Commission of India. Okay, so we look at the composition. We have the Chief Election Commission, we have the Chief Election Commissioner, CEC, we have election commissioners as fixed by the president, we have the appointment and tenure job per constitutional scheme. So every Election Commission of India will have Chief Election Commissioner. Okay, and then the number of election commissioners as fixed by the president, let's say it's 3 or 4. And then appointment and tenure as per constitutional scheme. Now, I've already explained that. I will skip that. Now, under election, okay, since I've already covered that in our previous classes, I will be skipping most of it. But the reason why I am putting all of this together is because there are some topics that we have missed out on, which is not in the Indian Constitution, which I've included it. Okay, so if I do it in a very messy way, topic-wise, it will be very difficult for you guys to categorize it accordingly for future conveniences. So we look at electoral roll and delimitation. Now I'll give you a proper explanation. Electoral roll: one general electoral roll per constituency. No exclusion in religion, race, caste, or sex. One general electoral roll, and then one person will have one vote. And Article 326, universal adult suffrage for Lok Sabha and State Legislative Assembly. Voting age is 18 years. Okay, 18 years. Voting age is 18 years. So delimitation. Let's talk about delimitation commission. The delimitation commission is a commission that delimits constituencies, that creates constituencies. Okay, so why do we have 60 MLAs here? Because the Delimitation Commission divided Nagaland into 60 constituencies. They delimit constituencies on the basis of population, on the basis of area, right? So they did it here in the state, they did it district-wise. Okay, Longling ge tuida dishe, Mokshung ge tosta dishe, and then Mon ge 9 dishe, and Zonapoto ge 7 dishe, Woka ge 5 dishe. So in the next Delimitation Commission, I think that was the Delimitation Commission during the 1970s, right? A lot of districts were a little behind, right? So there were people in power. For example, Mokshung has 10 MLAs. We will see a reduction in the number of MLAs, and then we will see an increase in the number of MLAs for Lotas, because the population is very similar, but then the number of MLAs, the proportion is so we will see certain balances in the next upcoming delimitation, and that's the reason why it also depends on the number of houses as well. Okay, census, our developments can come on. Say we discuss about that, right? Why people are building houses, so forth. So yeah, it's Delimitation Commission that delimits constituencies. It fixes or readjusts territorial constituencies and boundaries. The objective is for equitable representation. Okay, I don't need to explain further on delimitation. And this is the Representation of the People Act. Tomorrow we will have a very detailed discussion on RPA Act 1950 and 1951. Now this is just to give you a background of what RPA Act 1950 and 1951 is all about. I told you guys that the Indian Constitution gives power to make rules for elections, right? Now this representative gives power to the Indian Parliament to make rules for elections. Now they, using the power given to them by the Indian Constitution, they created the Representation of the People Act 1950 and Representation of the People Act 1951. Now what is 1950? Very simple. 1950 Act governs who can be registered as voters and where. Okay, how can you be, are you eligible to be a voter? The answer is in RPA Act 1950. Okay, where and who can be registered. It talks about allocation of seats in the Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. Kiman seat allocate kurigina ase. Lok Sabha de Nagaland has 1 seat. It's mentioned in RBA. And then delimitation of constituencies law process p, preparation and revision of electoral rolls p. Kina electoral rolls can prepare gruwo, kina revise gruwo. Qualifications and conditions for registration as a voter. Okay? And as a voter, what are your qualifications mentioned in RBA? Appointment of electoral registration officers and related machinery. Officers can kun appoint gruwo na for the overall conduct of election and so forth. It's mentioned in RBA 1950. Okay, and in 1951, Bishibak during and after election laga rules and regulations ase. Alag wala do 1950 do election no agide. Voters can kina register bro na. Our electoral roll can kina revise bro, kina structure bro, and all that pre-election Bishibak 1950 day. And 1951 day, during the election, conduct of elections and post-election. How do we conduct election and what happens after post-election? Okay. When and how and who can contest. So this is the scope of the act. We will discuss that in detail, but if you look at it, the qualification and disqualification for membership, the conduct of elections and electoral offenses. What are the offenses during election? How do we register political parties? How we regulate election expenses? How do we disqualify for certain offenses? One very interesting fact is that the Election Commission of India registers political parties, okay, but they cannot deregister a political party. And I will give you an explanation tomorrow why they cannot. And corrupt practices, bribery, undue influence, and all that prohibited in the election, which is also mentioned in RBA 1951. So please come prepared. Okay, we will have a very detailed, because election very important. RBA 1950 and 1951 extremely important. Now these are the qualifications, disqualifications, and election petitions, which we will learn about in detail tomorrow. And just to give you a glimpse, qualifications: you have to be a citizen of India, you have to take oath or affirmation for election. Okay, election. And Lok Sabha minimum 25 years. So those of you who are 25 years and above, you can contest for elections in for Lok Sabha election, Rajya Sabha, but you have to, I think none of you are 30, so Rajya Sabha you have to attain minimum 30 years, and other statutory requirements. And disqualification, if you have a business, if you hold a house of profit, you cannot contest in election. And if you are declared as having an unsound mind, all pakla je, pakli je na, election jawle na paro de, niga je, and so forth. And election petitions challenge the validity of an election. You can petition, okay. Even every one of us can do it. You can challenge the validity of an election if you feel like an election was rigged, right? You can submit a petition before the High Court, and there are certain rules and regulations in RPA Act 1951 that talks about, bribery, that talks about this and that. What are the rules and regulations? We will study them in detail tomorrow. Now, political parties and registration. Look at it. How are political parties registered? Under Section 29A of the RPA Act 1951. Okay, you will learn about that in detail. So it's mentioned in RPA Act 1951, the process of registering political parties, recognition criteria. There's national party and then there's state party. Okay, and then why recognition matters? Because if you get recognition, you will have election symbols, reserve election symbols. You will have your own symbol, and you will have some statutory and administrative benefits. For example, national parties, they have a very large government properties given to them in Delhi. So there are 6 national parties. We'll learn about that. BJP, in INC, BSP, CPIM, AAP, NPP. So all the 6 parties have their own building, okay? And benefits can be reserved for that. There are other benefits. We will learn about that tomorrow, okay? So political parties and due recognition, and then the model code of conduct. Again, RPA Act also discusses about the model code of conduct, okay? About the guidelines for it mentions the guidelines for political parties and candidates during elections. Okay, if you have to listen very carefully, or tomorrow you will struggle. The technology and electoral reforms. One very important thing: electronic voting machine and voter verified paper audit trail. A lot of people think that since VVPAD was introduced back in September 2013 and EVM was first used in 1982, a lot of people think that VVPAD is a system that we use. Okay, VVPAD is not a system that we use. EVM is a system that we use, but we added VVPAD to EVM. Now, what is EVM? It's an electronic voting machine. Okay, it's an electronic voting machine in which you go and you push the button. There will be a blue button. Every candidate will have their own separate button. If you vote on a certain candidate, the VVPAD is kind of like a printer that prints the slip, and then with the ballot, postal ballot, with the electronic ballot, the slip will go inside and it will be stored. Okay, so the VVPAD, it's kind of like a printer that prints the receipt of the candidate that you voted for. But EVM is a machine that lets you vote. Okay. So EVM, it records votes electronically, and it reduces invalid votes. It simplifies counting. Automatic as a counting the EVM the person that you vote, proof will be given by VVPAD, but EVM will electronically calculate the votes for them, and votes will be calculated. But again, VVPAD will split na tan ubi count double checking there. All you need to know is that it was first used in 1982, and in 2004, Lok Sabha election was conducted entirely via electronic voting machines in 2004. Very important fact. Now, VVPAD, paper slip briefly shows selected candidates and symbol. Paper slip ulaw de VVPAD bra, and it provides verification and audit trail. Okay. So, udo audit la trial jao, udo audit go, the like polling station, the officers can go and they will audit it. Is it actually true? Now, whatever is shown in the EVM machine, the number of votes the, each candidate got, it will be again verified through VVPAT, paper-wise, count go down, separate go. Interesting, right? And because some people can rig the EVM machines, and they have rigged the EVM machines in the past, okay? Past the EVM machine rig kura takpi as India there. Manugi actual manugi mon vote there, so alang manugi pura vote chas na. So utu time de, utu VVPAT brother print bro the slip to, one for you and one for the ballot, okay? So VVPAT though it's kind of like non-electronic, and EVM is kind of like electronic, both together. VVPAT is an electronic devices that generates the paper slip, right? So ekta non-electronic proof as EVM the electronic proof as and together double security during elections, okay? And NOTA, N-O-T-N, none of the above as none of the above. It was also introduced in September 2013, and one very interesting fact, VVPAT na with the EVM machine na the first time they experimented it was in Noksan Assembly by-election in Nagaland, okay? Pura India there, Nagaland the first experiment version, VVPAT, very interesting. Prelims are all high chances there though. Noksan Assembly na by-election there. So none of the above was introduced in September 2013, and which means if you wish to express your dissatisfaction about the candidates being incapable, not in your favor, then you can also protest, right? It's a form of protest, and you can choose the NOTA option, which means NOTA, none of the above. Charging give it kushina pai, washing give it kushina pai. Na, inigala vote takpi dire ajigili do. And oh my goodness, India de na NOTA la vote man bishi ulai she last time. Bishi ulai she de. To udu mala dissatisfaction be ekta NOTA de thalio pare na. So it also helps us realize like whether back then if we did not have the NOTA option, we have to choose one candidate. We have to now. But ajigally we know though if there's a more water votes, it means that community ba kushi pa manon no ito ina like that. Yeah. So next we will go to political parties and pressure groups. Okay. Political party is an organized group seeking political power through elections. It is essential for strengthening a democracy. Okay, I will not list out the functions. You know what political party is. You know what are its functions: to contest election, to form and run governments, and so forth. I will skip that. And national and state parties. The national parties, meaning national election. State party means limited to state. Okay, state party, even state parties can contest in other states. Okay, but national party though, when we talk about national party, criteria ekta you need to have certain MLAs, you need to have certain MPs and so forth. Okay, so a state isn't limited from contesting only in one state. It can contest in other states as well. But a national party status is given to state parties or whichever party that wishes to gain the national party status. But there are requirements, okay, which we will learn about later. They have to meet criteria. And national parties, these are the 6 national parties. Back then we had other alag party can be but at the moment right now there are 6 national parties in India: the BJP, INC, BSP, CPIM, AAP, NPP. National People's Party is, and I've given you the symbols as well. National People's Party though, Conrad Sangma is there. Do you know who is Conrad Sangma? The Chief Minister of Meghalaya, okay. His father was P.A. Sangma, who contested for the presidential election against Pranab Mukherjee. Way back. Yeah, he has already passed away, and the legacy is the legacy is still ongoing. Conrad Sangma, who is the chief minister. So, Taila Party as a National People's Party. All these 6 parties are officially recognized national parties in India. Okay, and the registered state parties there are 60 state parties in India registered bolakan. Okay, and but there are more than, let's see, there are around 2049 registered but unrecognized parties. In order to be recognized, certain criteria meet which we'll study in detail. Now, you look at party systems in India. We have the one party, we have the two party, we have the multi-party. Okay, so one party and two party is not applicable to India. We have multi-party, which means BJP, Congress, PSP, CPI, CPIM, and so forth. Now, party we call it multi-party. But in the US, they simply have the Democrats and they have the Republicans, right? Who was the representative of the Democrats in the past? We had Barack Obama, who was the president of USA as a member of the Democratic Party, and who is the member of the Republican Party? Donald Trump. Okay, now the ruling party is Republican Party, so they have their own set of values. How does the Democrat handle society? What the Democrats do is that they try to feed the poor people by giving them money, by providing welfare schemes like MJ Energy and health program. Whereas for Republicans, more capitalistic in their thinking. Instead of giving the people free money, they want people to learn the skill so that they can go and get employed, so that they can go and earn their own money. Republicans. So according to ideology, tahan do vote ko rito. Ali yadi the religion na Hindu, Muslim, Christian, and so forth. So we have the multi-party. Ours is very messed up. Okay, and one party is again very dangerous. We have the Communist Party of China. We have the Communist Party of Cuba. We have the People's Party of Korea, of South Korea. All these are one party system. Okay, the single party dominates the politics in their respective countries. The opposition parties are either absent or banned or very badly subdued. It's just like the small parties in China. Okay. So one party, there's two party, and then there's multi-party system in India. Okay. Very simple to understand. And we also have one party dominance and the Congress system, which I will explain that. Just give me a second. Does any one of you go to study centers, study libraries to study? Or do you guys study at home? For now, you guys can study at home, okay? But eventually, after maybe some months, if you're finding it difficult to study at home, a study center helps a lot. But depends on you. I have my niece who got through NPC this time as BTO rank 1. Her name is Akaminla. She also studies at home. Okay. She has pasted everything on her wall, on her bed, like on the table, even inside her shoes. She has some receipts, slips written, like all the formulas and articles. There are some people who are crazy enough, right, to do all these things, and she's also one of them. Okay, and she's just 23 years old, and last year she got through NPC prelims. She reached the NPC interview, and she also reached UPSC mains. Both first attempt, but she chose NPSC interview because me and our family members encouraged her to, since it's her first time, she had a very good chance of getting ESC last year. But what happened was that when she went for the interview, the NBC members, they told her that she was ineligible because of her age. She must have attained 22 years of age before January 1 of last year. And she only reached 22 years of age last year in the month of April. So she cried and everything. So a big commotion happened. The NBC, they also blamed themselves because it was also their mistake, a very bad technical mistake. And so it became a very hot news again last year. People started talking about it. My friends knew about it, and a lot of people knew about it. And this time, finally, she got the job. So she will be coming next month, okay, to interact with you guys in the month of September, because her mens is from August 21 all the way up till August 29. So she's an amazing person, a very God-fearing person, a very humble girl, and then I feel like she would be an inspiration to all of you, and maybe you guys can have a discussion, and she will also give you her side of the story, and maybe that can help you guys, steer the course of your life accordingly. So since most of you are girls, especially again, na ikaw magiging tala life story buludo, I think all of you would understand. She has also gone through a lot, and she will be narrating her story as well. She's an amazing individual, and hopefully one day I feel like she will achieve her dreams of cracking the UPSC exam. And the good thing about her is that she doesn't even know the nature of jobs, okay? Just in the same way that you guys don't have much idea about the powers and functions of the ESC, the DSC, what are the differences, and should you opt for ARTO or SAS or this and that, section superintendent ARTO. You don't know the civil list and all that. Even she doesn't have any clue, okay? Whatever we tell her, she just listens, she studies. But the good thing is that she listens though. She listens very well. And if she's taught anything, she will write it down, she will memorize it by hook or by crook. So at this point, what I would encourage all of you, because as a lecturer, I've seen some of my students, and I've seen some of the people near and dear to me get through NPSC, get through NSSP. And one thing that separates people who succeed from people who don't succeed is that they're willing to listen. We always have this, all of us, we have this ego, okay? I'm already janina, say. That's where we make the mistake. Every topic that we discuss, there will be at least 2 to 3 points that you may or may not know, okay? So that will make the difference in the end. Because if you give the preliminary examination, it's for 200 marks. And let's say the cutoff mark is 110. It's very easy for you, for anyone who studies, to get 90, okay? But to go all the way up till 110, it's a very difficult process. Ekta mark ekla pawole bina last dito. She took by to get that extra 5 to 10 marks. What will create a difference is your extra sincerity, your ability to listen. If you go and if you open a book, okay, Indian polity, I can assure you, you will not know what to study, what not to study. And most of the times you will end up studying the unnecessary ones. And you will waste a lot of time in the process. So you must be willing to listen, right? My niece, she listens really well, okay? When we tell her what's important, what's not important, she studies that. And when we tell her what book to study, what book not to study, we advise her to join a Focus Academy online class, and which helped her with 2 papers. Right, she was very new to polity, and also she was very new to Nagaland. So these 2 papers, toppers, because at that time I wasn't running a coaching center. It was last year. She graduated last year, and so I recommended Toppers Academy, and she joined Toppers Academy, and then online class, just the online class. She spent, I think, 1.5 months, and she took everything, and then it was self-study. We just guided her in whatever ways we could, and she is finding success in ways that we never imagined. So I see that in a lot of you, okay? I see her quality in most of you, the level of sincerity. I appreciate that a lot, and this sincerity of yours will one day give you the success that all of you deserve. And since NPSC and UPSC has a very similar structure, okay? Even if you go to UPSC coaching center, they cannot teach you more than what we already teach you. Everything is conceptual based. So if you guys want, you can even try for UPSC later. For now, NPSC the first year, and then see where you stand, what your capabilities are, and if you have the desire to study for like 10 to 15 hours like my niece, then that's like good on you, man. Mudana, bro. But if you guys want, you guys can. Okay. For me, my maximum capacity is 5 hours a day. It's been enough. It will be enough. So it might be enough for you guys as well. Toando alok to lagi. Kila itiad na tunase. So trying to understand and all that. Oh, so sorry. At what time do you guys have lunch? Do you guys have lunch in the morning or after the class session? Morning. Now manas na. No baje book lagi jai. I used to, okay. I used to feel very hungry. I eat a lot, okay. I eat a lot. Like, and there's nothing I don't eat. I eat everything. Like, you'll be surprised by what I eat, okay. I'm okay with a lot of things. Even in my family, like my friends, they don't tell me to khai. They just say khabi, and then I eat it. So, and my appetite is like no words. So I would encourage you guys to not be too choosy as well. Or noodles kan na khabi. Have rice, stay healthy. Shall we continue? I think we stopped by the party systems, and then we will switch to one party dominance in the Congress system. Here's a one party dominance. One party repeatedly wins and governs. We had that system in the early post-independence era, where none of the political parties were able to overpower the Congress, the Indian National Congress, and only in the 1970s. Only in the 1970s, the Congress weakened a little bit, and mainly because of Indira Gandhi. I mentioned about that, right? About Indira Gandhi and what transpired after 1975. So one party repeatedly wins and governs, others exist legally. The INC dominated post-independence politics for decades, okay, and the opposition parties continued contesting elections throughout. But one-party system is not one-party dominance. When I talk about one-party dominance, it means there are multiple parties, but one party is dominating. So I don't mean there's only one party, okay? So understand the difference. Where right now we're talking about a multi-party system in India, in which there's one-party dominance, which is the Indian National Congress. And Rajni Kothari, he coined the term Congress system, okay? Now, why did he coin the term Congress system? Now, Indian politics was very unique. It was very unique in the sense that the reason why I explained about the ideological difference between the Democrats and the Republicans in America is because these parties, they have specific ideologies. In the US, the Democrats have a list of ideologies, the Republicans have a list of ideologies, and they follow that religiously, they follow that very strictly. But here in India, no party has ideology. It's all about situation. It's all about in which situation we should support the Muslims, in which situation we should support the Hindus, in which situation we should be liberal, we should be strict, this and that. Okay? So the Congress system was coined by Rajni Kothari to explain a similar kind of situation back in the days. There were many regional parties, okay? CPI, for example, Communist Party of India, Congress Socialist Parties, all this. We also had the P Bharatiya Jana Sangh, BJS, which is the earlier form of BJP, that pressured the Congress to, on matters such as religion. CPI, Communist Party of India, they talked about socialist form of government, social welfare schemes, and so forth. They pressure. But the one thing about the Congress system that you will see when Rajni Kothari wrote was that the Congress system accommodated the diverse social and ideological groups. I told you that political parties have their ideologies, right? Naga India, they go a specific ideology now, whatever suits them. One moment they'll support the Hindus, one moment they'll support the Muslims. It's a little embarrassing, but that's how we work, right? It's a land of diversity. So Rajni Kothari talks about the Congress system in which the Congress party, Indian National Congress, they accommodated the diverse social and ideological groups into their party. Okay, itulah aja. Internal factions function like an intra-party opposition, even though they differ in ideology. They try to put them all under one umbrella, the INC, the dominant party system. So internal factions function like intra-party opposition. Intra-party means opposition within the party, not inter. Inter means two political parties, right? Intra means within. Okay, whatever conflict you have inside your heart is intra-heart, right? And if you have conflict with your friend, it's inter-conflict. So intra-party opposition, that's how they manage, okay? That's how they dominate it. But in US, it all depends on ideology, right? If you are a voter in the US, and I met a very Trendon Knight. Okay, Trendon Knight is a very good friend of mine, an American friend whom I met in Facebook way back in 2011 or 12 when I was like a chapri. Okay, and then I used to have philosophical discussions with everyone. And Trendon Knight was a PhD scholar in America, and he used to clean toilets from one house to another and earn his living, and that's how he was able to support his education. Now, what happened was that Trendon Knight was, after he completed his masters, he was a homeless boy, and he used to roam around in the street like begging. He was a beggar. What happened was, after Donald Trump came into power, it was Donald Trump who organized campaigns for upliftment of the homeless people by providing them the necessary skill set, the necessary idea about how one should conduct his business, how one should earn his living. So he attended a training program, and in the training program, he was taught the idea of working small jobs that can once accumulated can turn into a big sum, a sum big enough to do something meaningful. So Trendon Knight followed the training program. He was part of the training program, and then he went from house to house cleaning, painting the walls. He was given the skill training for painting the walls, and then initially he started painting the walls, and later on he started cleaning toilets because he felt that was the most beneficial, because it's based on supply and demand, right? The demand is high, but the supply of the services is low. He understood that ideology from the training conducted by Donald Trump. So he understood that the supply was very low. A lot of people were not willing to clean the toilets, but the demand was very high. So when the demand is high and the supply is low, it means the services will be expensive, right? So he used to earn $10. Okay, $10, that means around 800 rupees for cleaning one toilet, and he would go from one house to another cleaning toilets for $10 each. That's how he was able to support his education. And which is why Trendon Knight, every time he votes in the election, in the presidential election, he votes for a party in accordance with his ideology. India ideology. It's a mixture of everything, which is why we vote for the party who is going to dominate the government. We do not try to form a party that has the same ideology as us. What we do is we vote for the party whom we think is going to win. We don't try to let our favorite party win. We vote for the party that we think will win. So I said that's the Congress system. They do not have a specific ideology. They accommodate diverse social and ideological groups into one. And all these people, even the Muslims and Hindus, they're part of the INC. These internal factions, they function like intra-party. Alag party from Noigina Congress Pitore Aigina, Udu Machide intra-party as so as long as it's intra-party, it's safe, right? The Congress will meet the demands of all of them. Iningala system, the Congress system, the Tagishi, and which is still present in the modern era, to party system. There's no specific ideology in any political party. We may say BJP, Hindu, but to what extent can they, exercise their beliefs? Right? A lot of people are Hindus, but but they also have members who are Christians. Mohanla BJP party as yate. Which is if they were all Hindu, if it were a Republican Party of United States of America with a very strict ideology, then By that standard, Christian MLAs of Nagaland shouldn't be members of BJP. So Bujas, even if they might have one ideology, they're always ready to accommodate different ideologies. So that's the kind of system that we have in India. Okay. Multi-party and coalition politics. Multi-party politics. Right now, I just explained to you that there's multi-party system. In India, we have the BJP, INC, we have 6 national parties and 60 state parties, and I think approximately 1,240 registered unrecognized political parties. So multi-party, and usually this time, last election, I think, by last election, the National Democratic Alliance was the alliance of BJP and its allies, and we had the India, INDIA, which was an alliance created by the INC. So the government that we have right now is a coalition government. Okay, BJP alone couldn't reach the majority. The majority in Nabungjadak, they cannot form a government, right? So what happened? Do you guys remember the 2 states that they tried to convince to join the BJP in the end? Please research on that. Okay. You can research on that. It's very interesting. They formed the coalition government in the end. Even Congress, the India, INDIA, and then the NDA, both these 2 had the chance to form a government. INDIA la coalition bi beshi thagishe, tate la bi beshi thagishe. But in the end, uto party 2ta asne, uto party 2ta to BJP to jashe, and then BJP was able to form the government. So right now we have a coalition government. Coalition means a coalition of different political parties forming together to form a ruling party. Okay, that's it. And regional parties, BJP, NDPP, all these are regional parties. Okay, I will not be explaining the reasons for growth and all that. Reasons for growth to be regional identity, linguistic and cultural interests, and so forth. In Nagaland context, you must focus on tribal identity. Okay, this is a very because this is just an advice that I'm giving you. The kind of parties that we have here in Nagaland, political there's a lot of involvement of tribal identities, customary practices, land resource issues. It deepens India's federal and representative character, but also at the same time, politics along tribal lines. Muy kohima the election jashigli kun vote dibo. Aro last time, assuming I forgot his name. Okay, ita pori ase Tiger and then the Dimapur 2 constituency. Tiger comes under Dimapur 2 constituency, right? And what happened was that Max Naga, you guys know Max Naga, YouTube there. An issue happened. Okay, Semahan Jaigana in this Sunday, pickup truck dinagi. I don't know what it was, and then it came, and then an issue happened. But Max Naga, he escalated the issue, saying that it's like a battle between the Aus and the Sunnis, and which is why the Aus, Subu, okay, and then Muatushi, Tajin Jawa Daxido. You're gonna vote the divided Taxia, but because of this issue, the Aus united, and then Muatushi won the election. Now, tribal lines, okay, everywhere we see tribal lines. And Dimapur 3, the Hekani, Dimapur 1, the Tovi Hoto. Now, you look at Hekani, majority of the people, they are Sunnis. So, if you now contest an election in Dimapur 3, it's impossible for an out candidate to win. So, we have a lot of ism, okay, in the state. I'm 100% certain that 20 to 30 years from now, when all of us are in power, when all of us are in our 40s and 50s, Nagaland will be, by and large, defined by our political ideologies. Mala ideology is of the vote, not along tribal lines. For example, if one of you were to contest an election, and if all the voters are present here in the classroom, would you judge that person based on that person's tribe? Ajigili mon no korido. Mon do we judge them based on their character, based on their capability, na? Whether they are capable, and we will reach that time, okay? But for now, tribal identity, customer practices can be involved in politics in Nagaland, okay? And pressure groups. We don't have a pressure group here in Nagaland. Pressure group, what is the meaning of pressure group? Organized groups that seek to influence government policies without seeking political power themselves. Dito the political power nai, but for example, environmental law pressure group ekta form kuro NGO. There are lots of NGOs here in Nagaland, okay, related to disaster, related to environment, related to upliftment of this and that category, upliftment of youths, Mothers Association. We have a lot of NGOs, Nagaland Mothers Association, yes. Now we look at all this. They try to influence government policies, which they do, okay, but there's always limitations. If we know that Rio is corrupted, but can we ever go to Kohima and can we ever protest against Rio? Do we have the power to do that? Do you think the Angamis will not stand up for him? They will. The ism is very strong, okay? It's very scary as well, because we can't even, go against our own chief minister. There's a limit to how much we can go against a particular minister, because that minister is protected by his community. Every minister is protected by his community. Alak jaga dito, if they wish to, go against the minister, embarrass me kuredo. So minister be buikay and then he does his job, right? Here, and there's recently, I think in Mangkolamba or ekta jaga there say under Mokshung district, some crores were like sent for constructing a building for community, but it was used to construct a private minister's residence. So the ekta Au Postila Youth Khan organization, a very good action. They submitted a letter to the governor, and then the governor ba the department ba calling letter aikina ase. Such things shouldn't happen. Now the youths are finally, standing up for the community. Mala generation then, Baba Khala generation do, kotabi naina, very messed up. Okay, very messed up. But as we can see, we lack even in pressure groups. We cannot pressure because MLA to manu ase. Na, mon chaishi bule do aro, semakan yekin chaishi bule do aro semakan utho do. They always feel like, everyone always feels like, if a community attacks their representative, tribe ke attack koran chan lage ba, mon de do, tribe ke. So utuan do chai jo eventually, but that's what we have here. So even in pressure group, you can, in the effectiveness of pressure groups here, you can write about the tribal lines, you can write about the influence of ism here in Nagaland, which limits the extent of pressure groups to influence the politics here in Nagaland, okay? And NGOs, civil society and social movement. NGOs, non-governmental organization. NGOs alag as civil society as a volunteer organizations between the family and state. And when I say between the family and state, it doesn't mean tajum majid ke phasina as de. Tight korna phasina na inanoy. It means outside the family, outside the state. Now it's neither a state nor a family. Family means private as a, state means government as a. But utula pahar de thagala, civil society as a. It includes NGOs, community and professional bodies, civil society. And civil society, the tribal councils, these are all civil societies, okay? Even tribal councils, ho-hos, the councils and ho-hos, and they promote participation and accountability. So accountability of MLAs, they will pressure the MLAs, they will caution the MLAs, and they will also promote participation in villages, grow, community work, and so forth, okay? And then we have the social movements, a collective sustained efforts for change. The JIPCO, have you guys ever heard the JIPCO movement, Narmada Bajao Andolan, and anti-corruption? I guess you guys are very young, okay? 2011, when I was in class, I think class 8 or something, 2008 or 9. Anna Hazare, he used to protest, okay? Every newspaper will contain the picture of Anna Hazare, Anna Hazare, Anna Hazare. That was an anti-corruption movement. He campaigned against anti-corruption. He campaigned against corruption, and he pushed for the establishment of Lokpal. Lokpal is again, we will learn about Lokpal in the following few pages, following few slides, and so it's an institution, okay, that checks corruption. Lokpal. So because of the pressure of Anna Hazare, even Lokpal was instituted. So we have the JIPCO movement, which is about the cutting down of trees. It was an environment-based movement. against cutting down of trees, against deforestation, and encouraging afforestation. Narmada Bachao Andolan is like Narmada River Day near the Sardar Sarovar Dam in the state of Gujarat. So it was about the construction of large dams because people would be displaced, and it was a discussion about issues related to displacement, rehabilitation, loss of natural resources, and so forth. So they went against the construction of dam. That was a movement against construction of large dams in the Narmada River. So Narmada Bachao, Narmada Bachavi, na? So these are social movements, okay? So I hope all of you are clear. NGO, civil society, and social movements. Hey, PC important as I mean, it's very impressive. That's why I wrote it. Parties, political parties, they seek power. Pressure groups, they seek influence, and social movements, they seek change. No, very impressive. If you were asked a question on all these three, and then you start off with this, full marks by as well. So impressive. I would be impressed if I were to check your papers and you wrote that. Now, statutory and regulatory bodies. Okay. See, statutory bodies, I have explained to you very clearly. It was created by an act of parliament. It derived powers from legislation. Statutory bodies are not constitutional bodies. It is not mentioned in the constitution. These bodies are created by an act of the parliament, right? I mentioned that very clearly. NHRC, CIE, CVC, Lokpal, NGT, many statutory bodies. Okay, I will only the only important thing for you to know right now is that statutory bodies are not constitutional bodies. These are bodies created by the act of the parliament, and they can also be removed very easily by a simple majority. Since they were created by a simple majority, they can also be removed by a simple majority. Very easy to create, very easy to remove. Okay, but if it's part of the constitution, you know the special majority and so forth. Nah? And regulatory bodies, these are bodies created for regulation. Regulate kurule, not supervise kurule. Rules and regulations can enforce kurule. For example, we have the SEBI, Security and Exchange Board of India. Okay, Securities and Exchange Board of India. Uto securities, it handles securities, trade, stock there, anyone. Stock market, investing in stock market. Uto anla rules kan pura SEBI by regulate kore. So these are regulatory authorities. Okay. Now regulatory bodies could be statutory bodies. It could be constitutional bodies. An example of constitutional body is a regulatory body is UPSC. No, it regulates exams, central exams, UPSC, which is mentioned in the constitution, which is why it is a constitutional body, but it also functions as a regulatory body. So, not constitutional bodies can be regulatory bodies, but not all regulatory bodies are constitutional bodies. Regulatory bodies can either be statutory bodies or constitutional bodies. Okay. Now there's one very specific, very special case, executive body. Now executive body is executive resolution. Na both na lage executive Amit Shah, Modi, Dharmendra Batan, kun executive te thagishe. Let's say they can create a body, an advisory body. Okay, advisory as they advisory enforce udo tahan. They do not have executive powers. They only have an advisory body. So what was the advisory body created at the beginning of the Indian Constitution? The Planning Commission, right? The Planning Commission was an advisory that created only the plans. It was the government, the actual government that enforced, that executed the plan, but Planning Commission will concoct a 5-year plan. Every 5 years, they'll change the focus. This time we'll focus on agriculture. This year we'll focus on, this coming 5-year plan will be focused on industrialization and so forth, right? Now, 5-year plan was replaced by Niti Aayog on 1st April 2015. Okay, the moment Modi ji came to power, Modi ji first came to power in the year 2014, and then the second election 2019 he won, in 2024 election he won, the Tinbar. So, well, after Modi ji came into power in 2014, the first major change he made was Niti Aayog, because Planning Commission had 5-5-5-5-year plans. But Modi ji and his council of ministers, they felt that India doesn't need 5-5-5-year plans. Instead, India needs plans in accordance with the demand. We need long-term plans as well as short-term plans. So he created a 3-year vision strategy, 10-year plan, 20-year plan, Independence Plan 1947 Viksit Bharat. There's a lot of plans, okay, under Niti Aayog, and which is amazing. 5 years, like ekta achik na do na bishi uniform ho jai. So Niti Aayog was a good decision by Narendra Modi ji. So it is the policy think tank replacing the Planning Commission. It was created by the Union Cabinet resolution in 2015. It is not a statutory body. It is not created by an act of the Parliament. It is not a regulatory body. It is not a regulatory body. It is not a constitutional body. It is a Union Cabinet resolution. Okay. The only Union Cabinet resolution, the only body created by a Union Cabinet resolution that you must know for the examination is Niti Aayog. Okay. And yeah, I hope everything is clear. Statutory, regulatory. Now we have the NHRC, SHRC, National Human Rights Commission and State Human Rights Commission. Okay, Human Rights Commission. It was created under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, and it protects and promotes human rights. Okay, if your human right is violated, you can approach the State Human Rights Commission (SHRC) and discuss the issue with them. And because they have the suo motu powers, which means they have the power to investigate a case without actually being requested by any individual. Tan Chailedo, an appeal na doesn't need to come to them. Appeal to Tan Bikuro, but appeal na ili tan nijomi jayga na suo motu action law bare. That's what it means by suo motu. Suo motu. Okay. So they have this power, and they also visit detention and custodial centers to discuss with the detainees and so forth. Okay. Now limitations. 1 year time bar on complaints, limited jurisdiction. Okay, and recommendations are not binding on the government, which means 1 year time bar on complaints. Whatever complaints they're making, it has a 1 year period which is validity. It must be solved within 1 year in Alaze. And recommendations are not binding on the government. Dan kiki recommend government can either listen, can say yes or no. So which means just an advisory role like that, in HRC. And CIC and SIC, Central Information Commissioner, Commission, State Information Commission. Please take a look at it. It was established in 2015 under RTI Act 2005. It enforces citizens' right to information across central public. Have you guys ever heard about RTI, right to information? One RTI could be lagaw pare do. Deputy Commissioner ke bhi RTI lagaw pare, and he is obligated to provide to you the information that you deserve. Okay. Now RTI can do kiwa regulatory Central Information Commissioners. Okay, Central Information Commissioners. If it were enforced RTI do, it monitors RTI implementation and reports to Parliament. Alright, every RTI filed will be collected by Central Information Commission and submitted to the Indian Parliament. So in the state, we have the State Information Commission that submits to the Central Information Commission, who will submit it to the Parliament. Okay, so enforces citizens' right to information across central public authorities. And for the state, we have the State Information Commission. Is that clear? Central Information Commission and State Information Commission is related to our right to information. Okay, we have the RTI. So anytime you hear about RTI, who enforces it? Central Information Commission and State Information Commission. Now Central Vigilance, Lokpal and Lokayukta. Now if you look at Central Vigilance Commission, it was created under the CVC Act 2003. It's a statute, okay, it's a statutory body, and it prevents corruption. Central Vigilance Commission, it oversees CPI's corruption investigation. But the limitation of Central Vigilance Commission is that with the commission do na khali supervisory as it has no criminal court powers. Don't supervise ikla bro. They'll supervise, they'll investigate, and then they'll find it, and then they'll just advise do this, do that. Okay. So effectiveness depends on cooperation for departments and agencies, which means CVC will submit its report, will submit whatever it saw, whatever it found to various departments, and those departments can handle growth. So they do not have actual power, execution power. Okay, it only has an advisory role. Now you look at Lokpal and Lokayukta. Lokayukta inspector is a class 2 inspector. Okay, in NPSC, it's a post in NPSC. Now we have the Lokayukta, we have the Lokpal. Now, it's also a branch of police, okay, kind of like police. What they do is that they only handle corruption as it, okay. There might be crimes as well. There are some criminal matters related to corruption, but anti-corruption ombudsman as a institution as a to handle corruption. In the state we have the lokaita, and in the center they have the lokpal. Okay, it functions civil court authority for any kind of. They can summon any government servant, and they can demand documents from them. They can demand audits from them, accounts from them, anything. Okay, they can search and seizure. They can search any house for let's say the procurement of a document that they believe is at the hands of the officer who committed a crime, financial crime, or maybe asset confiscation for the sake of it. They can also confiscate certain assets that they believe will help aid their case. And the issue is that there's delay in investigation and adjudication. All of delay as they lokpal na cases kando. And then need for institutional strengthening and staffing. Staffs can be pishi komdi as which is why if you get local law inspector na, because there's less staff, promotion be choldi as well. Class 1 holy be pishi easy as the next promotion is DSP, okay, local law inspector. It's a very good post for people interested in police. It has concerns over independence and interagency coordination. Independence in na, they're under the influence of, the bureaucrats, the politicians, the don't be assay. Now, National Green Tribunal, you can read about it. For environment, National Commission for Women, you can write about it. National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, you can read about it once you go home. And Niti Aayog, I have explained Niti Aayog as well. And in the chapter 6 governance, we will have a quick 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will finish the class. Meaning and core principles. Governance is a process of decision making, policy implementation, and service delivery by public institutions involving government, citizens, civil society, and private actors. So what is governance? It is just a process of decision making, right? And the core principles, you must be transparent, you must participate effectively, you must be effective in your role, you must follow the rule of law, you must be accountable, and so forth. Okay, you understand the key principles of good governance. And citizens charter, this is you need an explanation. A document stating an organization's commitment regarding public services delivered to citizens. So it is a document, okay. If you go to any government website, just try visiting a government website after your class session, and you will see a section called Citizens Charter. Every department in Nagaland is required to provide a citizens charter that shows its commitment regarding public services delivered to citizens. So they will have a commitment, okay, they will have a declaration, and they will state their commitments to the public, saying that we will deliver our services so and so in honest way, and so on. This is a declaration, okay. So its objective is to improve the service quality, is to increase transparency, and so forth. So the limitation is that it's not legally enforceable, okay? It's not legally enforceable, and lack of citizen awareness as well. Kun website visit kore na, departments kala citizens charter, so what will, for example, citizens charter in another go there. First, they will show their commitment and saying that they will do their duties well, and these are the services that we provide, and these are the standards, and then the time limits, and what are the eligibility and procedures. We also have a website, a citizens charter and DMC website as well. They will show all the services provided, the eligibility and procedures, and contact details, and whatever grievance you have, the mechanism to redress your grievance will also be mentioned. That's just citizens charter, okay? But it is not enforceable in the court of law. For example, website kunba den nai, you cannot go to the court and ask the court to punish that department. No, you cannot do that. It is not enforceable, okay? So citizens charter, you can use that in your mains. I've used it. This is one of the most frequent topics that I usually use in my mains answer writing. Okay, is the citizens charter. It's a very important point you can add. Right to information, I have already mentioned that. But one thing that I will mention though is that if you file an RTI against, let's say, deputy commissioner and so forth, and then they don't give you the file that you asked for, okay, then you can go to the first appellate authority. There will be an officer, an appointed officer, and then you can go to that officer under the, I will show you. Central Information Commission or State Information Commission na State Information Commission la under the officers kan ase na so uton office kan lo de apni job re jai na submit kor lage first appellate authority. You can file an appeal there stating that I have submitted an RTI to the Deputy Commissioner of Woka, but I haven't received the information that I asked for in Yala. So that's what first appellate authority is about. Now, public information officer থাকিব, so you can go and you can talk to him about any matters. And we have the central and state information commissions. So that's it. Important points: information generally provided within 13 days, but 48 hours in cases involving life or liberty. Okay, that's emergency, so 48 hours. But for rest, information should be provided within 30 days. Okay, if it's beyond 30 days, then you can go to the first appellate authority, the officer appointed by State Information Commissioner. Okay, so this is it. Social audit and social responsibility. This is the last third or fourth slide. Please bear with me. Social audit is a participatory process where citizens examine the implementation, expenditure, and outcomes of government programs, especially welfare and rural development schemes. So features and social accountability, broader mechanisms through which citizens and civil society hold public institutions accountable. Okay, so you look at social audit, you look at features, public participation, verification of records, community scrutiny, public hearings, identifying irregularities. The best example that I can give you when it comes to social audit is MGNRGS scheme. Okay, the community as well as the village council, they gather together to audit. So these are social audits. Another form of social audit is we have a system, okay, in our community. We have a term called bang. Okay, so in that bang, it's kind of like bang means morong, okay, in our dialect, but it's a group of people that are categorized according to their age group, and then the highest age group. That's not all enough. Obviously, like the most senior most people would be around 40 years or so. So these people, they're from an age group, and these people, they have the authority to question even the village council on social audit, whatever works they did, this and that. The village council also has the power to audit the VDP secretary on how he used the money and what are the works done. So these are like verification of records, community scrutiny. These are all social audit. Okay, and social accountability. Again, it's very similar to social audit because you audit a person, and if the person isn't good, he will not be an accountable person. If the person is good, then he is someone who is accountable, right? And if he's not good, he should be held accountable, he should be punished. Relation bujias na. So social accountability, a broader mechanism through which citizens and civil society hold public institutions accountable. Let's say in Woka, okay, the people of Woka, they are not satisfied with works related to road and bridges. So they can approach the deputy commissioner, or they can even approach the executive engineer of R&B, and then they can file an RTI, and then the EE will have to give them the report of the amount of money that he received, and then tadiba jani chao pusa kiman khaise kiman khane na nikala RTI khan. These are the tools that they can use. Okay, they can use social audit, they can use RTI, they can use citizen feedback. Public khan la feedback pe lo bare rasta bana de ai to manu ra kima mosto banai je rasta do na all that. So that's social accountability. But here in Nagaland again, ulta, the people who should ensure social accountability, the village council members, they are the ones who say no, so they are chamla. And then e-governance and digital governance is the same. E-governance use of ICT, integrated computer technology, to improve government functioning in public service delivery. Examples: online public services, digital reports, and e-procurement, digital payments. Digital governance, further use of digital technology, data and platforms to transform how governance is designed. And you can use the same definition for both. Okay, e-governance and digital governance. It has these two are have the same use. So when we talk about e-governance and digital governance, we have the online trade license registration system here in Nagaland. DTMC has a website where you can register, register for trade license. Okay, we tried the registration process, but website all of the we had to do it manually. We had to go to the office and do it manually for this academy. So, but then hopefully now is good. Oh, sorry. E-governance and digital governance. They use a lot of tools. Okay, they use a lot of tools. I will explain even direct benefit transfer in the next slide. Direct benefit transfer, and there are various government websites through which they provide advertisements for job applications. Some are to be submitted online. So these are some services that the state government renders with regards to digital governance. आजकल तो सबै digital हो जाए. Even NPSC exam form fill-ups can be पूरा digital हो जाए. Back then we used to, not me, I mean people already मला time दिलो obviously digital आई जाए, but try किना form submit करो लगे ना, and then form submit grow, and then they'll go all the way to Koima to submit the form and then give the exam. But now everything is digital, right? So these are the tools that the state government is using with regards to digital governance. And we have the direct benefit transfer. Actually, what happens is that MGNREGA, the guaranteed wage for 1 day of labor is 234 rupees. Okay, so imagine that every individual will have 100 days of guaranteed wage. 100 days of guaranteed wage. So 100 days of manual skilled labor, unskilled labor. Hajra de 100 days guaranteed as a every individual must be receiving 23,400 rupees though. Which they must be, okay. But that they ek 2,000 did it though. Baki do council chairman kan PTO aro VTB secretary kan bhag le pusa do. Imagine the number of people in that village. Pusa kiman khai dego na. Half of Hulu coming na Nakavi, but Kawakazu will half of Hulu Kavi, one of the Nakavi. Aro by chance, if the people protest against it, next time they take you to the Nakaliwodo. Aro the Ekazabi Nabo, na Inia Juliaze. Aro Ajigale TPT is there, and the government thought that this will solve the issue. Kodak China ATM Olagina DB. TPT means direct benefit transfer. So Pula the money used to come into the account of the PTO. Who had the power of TTO, throwing and dispersing officer, was a throwing and dispersing officer of his range, and the range la kiman pusa ase pura udo 100 days na udo la sok manula 20 something ay gina tala Victoria 100 crores ina la kunba jaga de do chama buri do eliba ta kiman khawo a public kiman dio itu karni Indian government ba side pishi mari ase na direct benefit transfer ase udo do registered beneficiaries of MGNREGA will receive their money directly in their bank account, which also did not solve the issue. So Manila Gori Jana ATM bra ulagina mangido aro pusa. So funny again, how can they even do that, right? China or corporate China pusa ulaina divi ko. Aro so Manila pusa ulaina diya na inala sa direct benefit transfer. Okay, so that's like direct transfer of government benefits to verified beneficiaries' bank accounts, but there are some TPDs that are working very well. The Kisan, PM Kisan scheme, Parliamentary Kisan scheme, Udula scheme under the every quarter, okay, every 3 months they receive 2,000 each in Alase. So Sashik every 3 months down 2,000 reach for the one direct bank they China registered group, right? Not that the officers can involve neither Kali banks can yes. So udu palace. Olivi RT la under the engineer condition do, it's always going to be corrupted. And no, I think no tool can ever solve this issue. It depends on who the BTO is. It depends on how the village council members are. It depends on how the public react. It depends on the pressure groups. But then, actually, rise was there. We have seen in cases, especially in Mokshung, some villages they are protesting against, the corruption in their villages. Aro ita do BTO kan ge pusakiman ay hajara kan 234 ase, 234 iti wala ge. 20,000, 23,400 iti wala ge when abi jaga di ula ase. Some areas in Dimapur, some areas in Mokshung, and I think rest of the district they'll soon follow that. Okay, so public law operative hui not the government. In our case, na. And we have the last second slide: grievance redressal and public service delivery. Now, grievance redressal. If you have a grievance, how is it redressed? A system grievance redressal is a system enabling citizens to report deficiencies, delays, or unfair treatment in public services. If you're not satisfied with a public service, you can submit your grievances. Okay, so who do you submit that to? Depends, right? If it's a grievance related to Anganwadi centers, you submit it to the Child Development Project Officer of that area. If it's something related to the road condition, you submit it to EE, Executive Engineer of Road and Bridges. If it's something related to land revenue tax or something, you submit it to Deputy Commissioner, and so forth, right? That's how you can submit your grievances. And yeah, that's it for grievance. Public service delivery, health, education, drinking water, food security. So every department has your own responsibilities when it comes to public service delivery. For health and family welfare, they provide free medicines, right? They provide free medicines and a lot of stuff. They provide a lot of free stuff. So this is one public service delivery, like delivered by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in Nagaland. And education, it will be very low cost. We can study in government colleges and universities, and so forth. Okay. So these are terms inside Indian polity that I wanted to explain to you guys. Okay, and there are many more. I will explain the rest tomorrow. This is the last slide. Participatory and outcome-based governance. Participatory governance, it involves citizens and stakeholders in decision making. Participation, right? Participation of both citizens and stakeholders, which means stakeholders means those people who hold the stake, MLAs. Implementation and monitoring, or in the case of village, gram sabhas. Okay, and outcome-based. We have the inputs, we have the activities, outputs, outcomes, impact. For idea, what did government achieve, not just what did government spend. So, outcome-based is like the focus on the result. They focus on the result, outcome-based. Okay, they don't focus too much on the process, but the result. What it's not just what did government spend. Pusat kami pelai sudah achieve Christian. Itulah outcome-based governance. If you're going to write in your mains exam, then what would be the ideal kind of governance according to you? But then you can also mention this outcome-based governance, right? Irrespective of the process in which the governance is conducted, if we view it from an outcome-based governance, as long as the result, the end justifies the means. As long as the result is satisfactory, the end should justify the means. You can write that, okay? And participatory governance is a kind of governance in which both the citizens and stakeholders are involved in decision making, implementation, and monitoring. Right? I hope these two terms are very simple. Okay, we focus mainly on outcome based. Okay. So for example, output, immediate product, example, number of schools with outcome, changing results, improve learning. So output to a contractor has built a school, right? That's the output of the money provided by the government. But the outcome is utu building banala value to what has it brought to the society? What outcome has it brought? Improve learning and impact, long-term effect, enhance human capital, long-term effect. Ito kasi. So Enhancing human capital, by the way, means like number of students, increasing the number of students, increasing literacy and so forth. Okay, human capital. So the core idea in outcome-based governance is not what did government achieve, not just what did government achieve, but what did government, not just what did government spend, but what did government achieve. Okay, so outcome-based governance is the best kind of governance in my humble opinion. Okay, so with this we have come to the end of today's session. All these terms that we discussed today, like I said, there were terms that I wanted to explain to you separately, but I cannot just take it out of the Indian Parliament, so I've integrated it into the various topics that we covered. Okay, so I hope